I'm pretty sure most of you have noticed how the thing that we call woke ideology today has a lot of activists that display a sort of religious zeal to them. But more interestingly is that the woke ideology doesn't seem to work very well in religious places like Eastern Europe or even Catholic places like Hungary. And the reason for this is that if you go to a rich Polish person and you tell them that they have privilege, well, they will respond with, "Of course I have privilege. I earned it, or I inherited it." Privilege in Eastern Europe is actually a good thing. People want to have privilege. It's a sign of success. Meanwhile, in a Anglospheric society, if you tell that someone has privilege, it can be used as a way of shaming them because the culture was set up to believe that people who inherit something that they didn't earn is actually a bad thing. Another example would be that if you go to a person from Eastern Europe and you talk about morality and you say, well, the government should solve this, they would look at you as if you're mentally ill. Like, you are an absolute complete cretin that does not understand history or does not understand human nature. Like, what do you mean the government? The government is made out of corrupt politicians. Like, how the fuck would corrupt politicians solve racism in society? That's insane, right? Or solve, like, why would they care? Why would they even give a shit? And so this is why wokeness doesn't seem to catch on as strongly in Eastern Europe, unless it's constantly funded by NGOs and it's constantly being worked in order to maintain. In fact, woke ideology seems to thrive, and it has strong roots in places that you can actually map where puritanical settlements existed back in the day. And so if you take a map of America and you're actually looking where the puritanical settlements are, that is also where the most woke states happen to be today. In other words, I believe that wokeness requires a cultural foundation that is founded based on puritanical thinking. Now, the word Puritan was a catch-all term for the type of people who wanted to purify the Church of England of its Catholic elements. And this happens around the time of the English War in the 1640. And some of the most prominent ones were called the Calvinists. They were also some of the most extreme. You see, they were not separatists like the Baptists who wanted complete autonomy for local churches. They were also not interested in reform. They wanted to purify or replace the Church of England with their own doctrine. Now, when they were unsuccessful to do this, they started screaming that they're getting persecuted. And so, because it was the actual time of sail and you could go to the New World, these individuals did just that. And so, they didn't go to America in order to live with other people, because other people found them absolutely insufferable. Even other Christians found their way of life to be a little bit too difficult. And so they ended up creating their own colonies. They created their own theocracies. And the culture that they set up is the exact culture that the progressives used in order to lecture and moralize society. They used their own puritanical values against them. So it's important to point out that progressives are not Christians with a rainbow flag. This is not what I'm trying to say, okay? What I am trying to say is that the tactics that modern progressives use would not have happened in a nation inside Eastern Europe or a nation like China or a nation like India. It can only happen in the Anglosphere, probably in Germany as well, a little bit, and mostly in places that had in the past strong puritanical roots. And you can also notice in the way that the conversation is being had. Because as I made the previous video, I talked about how the vocabulary changed, but the moral machine remains recognizable. There is sin, but now it's called harm. There is confession, but now it's called accountability. There is heresy, but now it's called misinformation or hate. There is excommunication, but now it's called deplatforming. So, in other words, the old Puritan would ask you, are you saved? Are you disciplined? Are you corrupting the community? Is your appetites under control? The modern progressive asks, are you harmful? Are you privileged? Are you safe? Are you consuming too much? Are you doing the work? When consuming too much, we're obviously talking about environmentalism, right? Like carbon credits, so on and so forth. The vocabulary may have changed, but the moral judgments still resonate. And so let's look at the particularities that Puritans have, which other Christian denominations didn't have or had less of. Like, for example, in a Puritanical society, they believe that the community has a duty to enforce moral order. It's the idea that a person can't sleep at night if they know that further down the hill there is a person that doesn't pray properly or is behaving in a way that is not godly. This is not the case in an Orthodox society. Orthodox society believe that the family has the duty to enforce moral order, and the family ends its authority where the household ends. In other words, like, you can care about your cousin, your second cousin, who your son is going to marry, but you are not supposed to care what the guy from the other town is doing unless it's affecting your family. And usually when it is affecting your family, your first instinct is to tell your family to stop going there. It's not to tell that person to stop doing what he is doing. Again, like, this is a fundamental difference in ideology that you notice in Eastern Europe compared to the Anglosphere. And you can also notice that this is exactly how modern progressives believe that the community, which in modern era is usually through institutions and government, has a duty to enforce social justice. Puritans do not see private behavior as fully private. Whether it's clothing, sex, alcohol, speech, education, prices, public worship, all have moral consequences for the community as a whole. Every single individual gets to be policed. Again, this is why other Christians had extremely difficult time living amongst Puritans. And this is why Puritans had to settle alone, because nobody wanted to live with them. It's suffocating. However, today, progressives, they also do something similar. They police jokes. They have very strict hiring practices based on moral issues. It doesn't matter how competent the plumber is. What matters is, does he believe, does he think the correct things? When it comes to food and energy use, they use ESG, how much you are allowed to consume. And even personal associations are treated as political and moral acts. Even if you're a person that behaves impeccably, simply by associating with someone else that has transgressed is now putting you under the crosshairs. The Puritans are famous for using price controls as well as moral regulations because they believed uncontrolled greed damages the common good. And so progressives today, you can also see that they use regulation, taxation, public policy, corporate pressures, because they believe uncontrolled markets damage the vulnerable, more importantly, the environment. Now, look, obviously, different governments arrive to the same conclusion, but what we get to notice here is the extremes. Both the Puritanicals as well as the progressives, they take these measures to the most extreme conclusion possible. Puritans disliked individual excesses. They had laws against luxury clothing and visible status display. Progressives often attack consumer excesses in similar moral language. If you guys remember Bernie Sanders saying that people do not need 23 deodorants or 18 pairs of sneakers, it's basically the same instinct with the Bible removed. Puritans believed that education existed to form moral character, not just teach information. This is extremely different than the way Eastern European believes, where a kid goes to school in order to learn about math and physics. The parents are the ones that are expected to teach the kids about morality. However, in a puritanical universe, there is no such thing. Everything is together. Everything is interconnected. You do not have the private life and the public life. And so the teacher becomes the second parent. We can notice this today, where progressives treat education exactly the same. Schools are not just for reading math and physics. They are used to teach appropriate social narratives when it comes to race, gender, climate, identity, justice, oppression, activism. Kids go to schools in order to learn their LBGTs before they can learn their ABCs. Puritans made education compulsory because they wanted a moral and disciplined population. Again, it's not necessarily it's a bad thing. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that these are the foundations for the modern social justice activism. When a culture gets to set the foundation that it's normal for the government to control the schools, then when you have another person in charge coming over using the same mindset, they just rewrite what the schools are supposed to be teaching. This is not necessarily good or bad. It has advantages and disadvantages, of course. The advantage is that, well, you actually do get a literate population. The disadvantage is that they use their literacy in order to further spread the LGBTs. Now, when it comes to universal public education, free college, curriculum, control, all of these were pushed by the progressives. And with it comes the taxation. The government can use that taxation in order to increase its power. And so, as you can see today, with the United Kingdom and other Anglosphere countries, the taxes keep growing and growing in order to fund the NHS, in order to fund the public school systems. In some places, it is absolutely unthinkable for the government not to be able to provide the public health care or to provide the schooling system. This is why you notice even in America, this massive division between places that used to have a puritanical culture with the places that didn't, places that had a more Catholic culture. Because the progressives are utterly shocked when they notice that people in Texas are actually homeschooling their children, right? Like they view this as an abhorrent, I guess like rebellion against authority, but also barbarism. It's like, how can the child learn if he doesn't go to school? And this is also a thing that's happening in across the Anglosphere, right? Like the idea of homeschooling your kid becomes more and more unpalatable. Now, Puritans, they also persecuted religious dissenters when they had power. This is very interesting with their behavior. When Puritans are in a minority, they always cry that they are being oppressed. They always cry about religious tolerance. When Puritans become a majority, they seem to be some of the most willingly to persecute group of Christians out there. Like, don't get me wrong, you know, there is Catholic persecution, there has been Orthodox persecution, although that is very low. It's very unlikely to hear about Orthodox persecuting people. But when it comes to, like, who is the most efficient, who is the most willing, who is the most aggressive, it has always been the Puritanicals, right? And because of that, they also get persecuted a lot. So you notice across their history this interesting balance. Where they constantly cry oppression and they constantly cry for religious freedom, and when they get it, they start oppressing others until they get oppressed in return. Guess who else does literally the same thing? The social justice activists, right? Like, I don't even have to go into detail to explain how when they're persecuted, they cry about how, you know, like minorities are being oppressed, how, you know, they find the country to be systemically racist and it's insufferable. And the moment they get power, the first thing they do is censorship, and they oppress as much as possible, to the point where the conversation of crying bully becomes a thing, right? Like they will cry while they lash out at you. It's a very perverse ideology, which again cannot exist in a country where the moral fundamentals that allow for shit like this can't happen. Like, for example, in Eastern Europe, we do not genuinely give a shit if someone is oppressed. Like, I'm sorry to say it, it's true, we're very cold, harsh people. If you hear that, oh, a person committed suicide because of online shit. During the time that I grew up, it would be, well, that's good, it's natural selection. Like, if they were so weak and pathetic that they couldn't handle a computer screen, how are they going to handle their first divorce? How are they going to handle the first time that a parent died? How are they going to handle the first time that they got fired, right? Like, this is a very weak, pathetic person, which obviously not their fault that they did the act, but like even committing suicide is disgusting, right? Like, be a man, just fucking deal with it. But it's also the parents, right? Like, where were the parents in this? This is how we think. Meanwhile, in a culture that's about morality is of, like public concern and we're all in this together, a person committing suicide is a failure of society, right? Like, we need to change the entire society in order to make it sure that not a single person commits the act in the future. A thing which, by the way, doesn't seem to actually lower the suicide rates, but it does seem to empower the people in charge. Now, there are other examples that, for example, Puritans believed heresy endangered the community, right? So, like, they were really against certain plays, they were really against certain books. Just like progressives today believe that harmful speech, misinformation, hate, or unsafe views also endangered the community. I already talked about in a previous video how the Puritanicals used words like sin, repentance, judgment, purity, salvation, while, the secular language from today talks about harm, accountability, privilege, safety, equity, and justice. The words did change, but the machinery did not. This is what I'm trying to explain. No, the ritual, the tactics, the witch hunting, the public shaming, like, these managed to resist time. Like, these were institutions created from the Puritanical era, and they have been used so often that even when the culture and the ideology changes, those institutions are still there, ready to be used. Now, Puritans also believed that judgment could be an act of love, because correcting sin saves the sinner. Progressives say the same thing with different vocabulary. Accountability is actually done because of compassion. Calling out harm is care. Silence is violence. Discomfort is growth. It's basically like church discipline written by an HR lady. Puritans believe that people were shaped by sin and predestination. Progressives believe that people are shaped by systems, biology, class, race, trauma, capitalism, patriarchy, family background, and of course, institutions. Puritans reduced individual agency through theology. Progressives reduce individual agencies through material determinism. Puritans said that man is fallen. Progressives say that man is conditioned by society. Puritans believe that society must constantly search for sin. Progressive constantly search for racism, sexism, fascism, transphobia, exploitation, privilege, and harm. Puritans had confessions. Progressive have videos with destiny. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.